And speaking about time, we're right in the middle of it. It's 15 years of the new constitution. Tomorrow is Katiba Day. Essentially, and since the promulgation of the Constitution on the 10th, in 2010, in August 2010, it's been 15 years of trying to implement it. And we're coming into a conversation this morning with Charles Nyachae, who's the former chair of the Commission of the Implementation of the Constitution, and he joins us this morning. Charles, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come to the Situation Room.
Thank you for being here.
And for me, it's always a great pleasure to discuss the Constitution of Kenya.
Thanks for being here and thanks for doing that, because we're going to get into that conversation this morning. But before we do, we would like you to interpret today's proverb. Dennis will tell you where that's from.
So we are in Seychelles today. The people of Seychelles are called Seychellois, and we talk about a country that got its independence in 1976, to be exact, June 29th, from the Brits. And the economy is pretty much pushed by tourism, because it is an island country. Tourism is big, and fishing actually, but what they fish mostly is tuna fish. They also get into the business of offshore accounts and whatnot in Seychelles. So next time perhaps you want to go visit and just wind down, they have beautiful beaches down there. But let's go to the proverb today. Don't overdo things, everyone breaks eventually. Don't overdo things, everyone breaks eventually. How would you interpret that?
That's a good one. The way I would my instant reaction to interpreting that one is that we should at all times be alive to our limitations as human beings, and sometimes, depending on the environment or the situation one is in, there could be a temptation to think that you are able to do it all, and you're able to almost carry the world on your shoulders. So I think basically, if I was to say it in Kiswahili, I think what I'd probably be saying is peleka dunia pole pole.
Mambo ni mosmos.
Mambo ni mosmos. Yes.
Yeah, very well and aptly put, yes. Always remember to just take a chill pill, relax, and
absolutely.
Get back to it later.
Absolutely, yeah.
As we get into this conversation this morning, it's 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution that took place, right? Above Uhuru Park in August 2010. And it was after years of experts, of constitutional legal minds, of wananchi, of folks coming together and saying this is the law that will rule the land, and said, okay, fine, let's put this document together. Well-known figures who are in positions of government today, others who continue to push for its implementation, and then said, okay, fine, the flag was hoisted above Uhuru Park and the new constitution was promulgated with a hope. And this was after a referendum. This was after referendums for, shall we have a new constitution or shall we not? The referendum went the yes way and said it was necessary for us to have a new constitution, and then the process began. After that process, it went through back and forth, and that's when the whole Wajiko term came into, where Wajiko now was involved in making sure that the new law under which Kenya would be guided then came into existence. 15 years later, the first question, before we even go into schedules and all of that for the implementation, have we seen that effort, that cry for a new law, for a new supreme guidance has actually been followed 15 years later?
Thank you. I think that's a good starting point. And thank you. Let me say this. To kick off, I think 15 years is a good time to have this conversation, to take a look at the 2010 Constitution and ask ourselves, as we gave ourselves this Constitution as a nation 15 years ago, what exactly is it that we hoped and expected to achieve or to realize, and where are we at relative to that? The reason I say 15 years is a good point to do this is that if you think about it, the people who will now be having this conversation, there are at least two distinct categories of people. I think some of the most learned input you're going to get is from people who say, around their late 20s, early 30s, and those are people who would have been in school at that time. We're talking 15 years ago, and those are people who, in all probability, would not really be very familiar with what it is the 2010 Constitution was replacing. And it's good because it means that they're simply saying that as a people, as a generation, this is how we want to be governed. This is how we want to relate to each other. And they will critique the 2010 Constitution from that perspective. Then there is the other group of people to which I would say I belong to. People who will be looking at what we call the former Constitution and judging the 2010 Constitution and what it has achieved or has not achieved against the former Constitution. I think the importance of identifying those two groups of people is that people like myself are probably going to be a little more lenient to ourselves.
In terms of the implementation of it?
In terms, yes. Okay. The content, of course, of the Constitution and the implementation of it. So that I would begin by saying that I noticed in the flyer that you sent out, you said the Katiba at 15 hits and misses. Now, for me, the greatest hit will be actually the very fact of having that Constitution, because we are all able, all those categories of people that I have said will be using the Constitution as a reference point. This includes those who strive to make sure that it is the implementation is achieved in both in letter and spirit, and even those who probably are contributing to the non or lack of fidelity to the Constitution will be trying to justify by reference to the Constitution. They'll be saying, no, this is how we see the Constitution. We think this is what the Constitution is saying, and we think that we are complying with the Constitution. So the fact of its existence forces all of us to use it as a reference point. So have we achieved what we sought to achieve 15 years ago as we adopted this Constitution? I would answer that at two levels. There is the laws that implement the Constitution. We have a relatively big document. The reason we have a relatively big document relative to other constitutions worldwide is because we were answering a lot of specifics from what had been happening prior to 2010. So you find things that in other countries you would probably not find in a constitution we, just to make sure that we don't lose the plot, we put it in our constitution.
Yeah.
As you all know, I was privileged to be among the team that was tasked to oversee the
implementation,
initial implementation of the constitution. And when I look back, and now I'm going to what I consider to be one of the major misses. Remember the
hits and misses.
The framers of the constitution did a good job, but hindsight is always perfect vision. I think the what was not sufficiently addressed is how are we going to ensure that the implementation of the constitution is sustained sufficiently long for this constitution to more or less become a culture.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, that is what the framers, I believe, of the constitution sought to do by creating this body called the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution.
What was it actually supposed to do? I know what the title says.
It was supposed to oversight the implementation of the then new constitution, and there was a process, and this oversight was at several levels. One of them was the constitution was not and is not self-executing, so it was necessary to create a lot of new laws and to review the existing laws to make sure that they were consistent with the letter and spirit of the Constitution. The other thing, of course, alongside other constitutional commissions, the CIC had a mandate of promoting constitutionalism. Now, that promotion of constitutionalism is, I think, one area where I think we have done poorly. Writing the laws and endeavoring to have laws that implement the provisions of the Constitution. I think as a country we haven't done too badly. But inculcating this culture of constitutionalism, I think as a country we have done abysmally.
So as you talk about the implementation of the Constitution, I remember back in the days when we were coming together with matters to do with the devolution, ensuring the devolution takes charge, and other laws that were put in place, you find that over time there are other laws that have been passed by the legislature that in one way or the other have made the implementation of this constitution to be difficult in terms of lowering the threshold the constitution had put in place before. And one would say all that is so that people would get away with what it is they want, because you talk about the culture of the constitution in Kenya, and one would say the constitution is only given reference when there is a matter at stake, but it is not our daily life. And one would ask, how then do we ensure that as Kenyans we don't say we have the 2010 constitution, that we live and embrace the 2010 constitution? It is part of who we are as a people.
That then is the major. That's the major problem. Now you mentioned perhaps laws and other actions or omissions which have in that period made the achievement of what the Constitution sought to do difficult. When you think about it, this shouldn't surprise us. Why? Because this Constitution, relative to the former Constitution, And relative to how we formerly lived as a nation, this constitution is very radical, transformative. And therefore, people are going to resist it, especially, not so much the people of Kenya, because the people of Kenya were responding to the experience they had, which is what propelled them to give themselves a new constitution. But those who had the responsibility to govern, whether you're talking then of the executive, whether you're talking of parliament, all of them. So the reaction was that, and I remember very, very, very distinctly when we started the process of implementation of the constitution, there was a lot of this attitude is that, look, hii mambo ya serikali, we have done it for a long time, tunaijua, and it works. So hii maneno ngine mnatuambia that they may not have said it all the time in so many words, but basically they were resisting change. Even those, if I could just finish.
Yes, please.
Even those who, generally speaking, were pro-change, were pro-katiba, they would reach a point where they say, "Aye, there," and the there they're talking about is what is expected from the katiba, but they would balk. I remember, just to give you an interesting anecdote, when we were writing the leadership and integrity legislation under Chapter 6, the process that was being used to write the laws is that we would liaise with whichever executive department it is. Then, we would write the laws. But at the end of the day, the law was going to be passed by Parliament, and it was going to be presented to Parliament by the executive. That's just the dynamics of it. And a lot of it, we started this is under the coalition government. That's really when we started the process. It's a coalition government that really midwifed the constitution. And let me say that by and large, the leadership of the coalition government was very supportive, very pro the constitution. But even they balked at some point. I remember one incident. This is the anecdote I was going to give you. When we were writing that leadership and integrity law, we've written the law. So now the final stage before Parliament is that we would go and sit with a cabinet subcommittee, and they would say their bit, and we would, if there are any issues, we would try and come to some agreement. Then, so that it had to then go and be adopted by cabinet on behalf of the executive, and then presented to Parliament for legislation. So we sit here with those of us who are involved, which is by the way, the next time, because I think he comes here sometimes, the next time you have PLO Lumumba, he'll probably give you a very interesting perspective of this.
Around this.
At that time, he was the previous anti-corruption. Yeah.
Yes.
So we are going through this document with the cabinet subcommittee, and at some point, a senior member of the then coalition government, who I would rather not name, but he was a senior person, and somebody who to this day I have very high regard for. We reached a stage, he told us, but you people, This was exactly right. Who are you writing this law for? Are you writing it for us Kenyans, or are you writing this law for angels?
That's a very good question, because that was what I was going to come in. And I think at that time he asked a great question. And so when we look at a constitution being written, do you think a constitution ought to be written for the times that a country currently is, or must it be aspirational? And what do you think Kenya's constitution is? Is it aspirational, or was it written for a time such as this? Because many have said that the framers of the constitution today, perhaps there are certain things that they would have changed or altered. So should constitution making be for the zeitgeist of the time, or should it be what you want a nation to become eventually?
Ndu, I don't think those two are, in my view, are mutually inconsistent. As I said earlier, as a nation, in adopting the 2010 Constitution, we were responding to an experience. As a nation, we had an experience which in many respects had led us to conclude, no, this is not how we want to be governed, and this is not how we want to relate as between us the governed and those who govern, and amongst ourselves. So we then, after a long process which you described earlier on, we came up with how then we think. If we are saying the way we were being governed under the former constitution was not how we wanted to be governed, we then came up with a way that we felt should be how we should be governed and how we should relate to each other. And that is why, if you look at the preamble to the Constitution, it talks about proud of our ethnic, cultural, and religious diversity, and determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation. Then it talks about recognizing the aspirations. Now you talked about aspirations of all Kenyans for a government based on the essential values of human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law.
So if that's the case,
so we are responding to
that.
The experience we have had, and we are saying how we now want to be governed and to relate to each other. And to that extent, the latter is then aspiration.
So then what responsibility then is borne by those who govern? Because this constitution is for those who are governed and those who govern.
Yes.
That the constitution, its making and its implementation doesn't give you a choice as to whether you're going to go by it or not. That you're bound by it.
It's not a suggestion.
Absolutely. So you're bound by it, whether you govern or you are governed.
Absolutely.
And that was my question. That because of a law that binds you as somebody who is in a position of leadership or somebody who is a citizen, it binds you, so you don't have a choice. Now, at the time that it was being framed, and in the times where schedules of it then have been implemented, we're still out on some of them. Those who govern, do we see that this constitution has become a suggestion? Because look at it, the things that you've read in the preamble to the Constitution, we have too many an example today of those things that are flouted overtly. And we have many jurisdictions as example around the world whereby the Constitution is sacrosanct, that you do not play around with certain things. So why have it if you're not going to follow it? You can't choose. You can't cherry pick and say, well, on Tuesday I will follow this part of the Constitution. No.
And on Wednesday,
I'll do another part, or on Saturday I'll just chuck the whole thing out of the window. No.
And that is why, as I said at the beginning, that is why it is right that we should have this conversation now. Look back at these 15 years. Go right back to when the Constitution was being discussed, negotiated, and written, and then look at the 15 years from the date of promulgation, and I think that if we have an honest conversation, there is every likelihood that there are parts of this Constitution where, as a nation, we may arrive at the conclusion that the aspiration, going back to the aspect that is aspiration, what we put in this Constitution as far as aspiration is concerned, there are things that we are likely to say no. Here, we aimed too high. Here, this was not going to work. But I think there are more situations where we are going to say that the aspiration was correct and is still correct, but we have fallen short. We here means, to a large extent, you've talked about those who govern. But I hold the view, which is not always popular, that even those of us who are governed contribute in a significant extent to the Constitution falling short. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, because you find that people who are very, very enthusiastic about the Constitution 15 years ago, today, in good faith, that enthusiasm has gone down, because they have looked and said, this, maybe they have looked at those who govern and said, no, this
is not what we thought.
This is not what we thought.
I have a question. My question is with regards to an earlier statement that you made, and you're looking at the formation then of this Constitution was based on where we had come from and the experience that we had, and we all know the experience of 2007, 2008 and everything else that happened before, and then going back, drawing back from historical injustices and a lot of other issues that needed to be changed in terms of governance and how people then relate with those in government. But there are a number of things I want to highlight. But first, the statement from that senior person who said that, are you writing this for angels? I'm curious to find out why was that question asked, first of all, because it's going to lead me to now my next question. Why did that individual ask, why are you writing this for us or for angels? What was the thinking around the question?
Okay, my understanding.
Yes.
My understanding. And as I say, I want to emphasize, and I hope that I don't overemphasize it to the extent where you now begin to identify who. but my understanding, I want to emphasize that this is somebody who, without a doubt, is generally pro the Constitution.
Yes.
But felt that in that instance, we were perhaps being too idealistic. And in my view, this is informed again by where we are coming from, because the person is looking at, okay, we want to really, in general terms, we this animal called corruption, we want to do away with it. But it's like the person was asking, in wanting to do away with it, do we really have to go to that extent, or can we? And in the end, of course, the legislation was watered down, and I hold the view that that has contributed significantly to slowing down the fight against corruption, which chapter 6, which is a very short chapter in this Constitution, but what it was responding to. I just give it as an example.
Yeah. So, which leads me to my next question. I mean, I think we all agree. You said our document is bulky compared to other nations.
Yes.
And in no simpler terms, it's normally say that it's a very progressive constitution globally.
Yes.
But there are several areas that have been highlighted before, and I just want to quickly highlight some of these areas, or partially just highlight some of these areas where it almost feels we're talking about hits and misses, but then there is also gaps. For example, because you're talking about corruption, one of the things that constantly we battle with on this show every morning when you're looking at the headlines is the issue of corruption. And the issue of corruption is not just at the executive level in terms of national government, but it goes all the way to the counties, to the extent that every time you look at the auditor's reports, you get overwhelmed by the numbers. You get lost in the numbers because it is so deep. Now, when you look at these counties and the idea to decentralize government, the Constitution then created the 47 counties. But in creating, in decentralizing power, there is the element of anticipating in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, in the next 20 years, how is our economy going to grow, and how do we anticipate the cost of sustaining this system of governance? That is one thing I want to find out. Did you and did the framers then sit to think through, this is what is going to be needed, apart from just setting the structures, but is what is supporting the structures, the cost implication of supporting what some would call a bloated structure in terms of salaries, allowances, recurrent expenditures, and so on and so forth. That is one. Now, in terms of political accountability, which is in that chapter you've just referenced, the strengthening of political rights, freedoms of association, rights to picket, multi-party democracy, and so on and so forth. We were coming from a place where we had a coalition government at that stage. Then, did the Constitution also anticipate to tighten rules around party discipline and coalition management, because it has always been an issue in this country every election cycle? That is two. Now, number three, we've had I'm just combining all these things. You'll give just one answer. Number three is looking at the role then of the Senate or Parliament. There's been an argument that although then the Senate was created to protect devolution, the Constitution then left ambiguous power between the Senate and the National Assembly, and that's why we constantly have fights between the Senate and the National Assembly in terms of oversight of county funds, budget approvals, and lawmaking, that it almost feels like these two units are, it's like a show, it's like showing off who's got the biggest muscle. Yet the Constitution, as everybody says, it's very, very clear. I can go on and on, but just on those three, there is the issue of now oversight from Parliament. There's the issue of the management of these 47 counties. Did the Constitution and you, as part of the framers, anticipate that 15 years later we'll be having the kind of problem we have today?
You know, the first day that I went into office, even before then, as the chair of CIC, even before then, having looked at this document, as somebody familiar with the law and constitutions, and bearing in mind that this was a negotiated document responding to a whole host of things. From day one, to me and to many people, it was clear that there were provisions in this constitution which were problematic. One of them you have just mentioned. From day one, it was clear that the way that the framers of the constitution have created a bicameral parliament in a very different way from other constitutional, other places where they have a bicameral parliament. making it in many respects difficult to work, like that relationship between the Senate and
National Assembly.
From the one
You knew there was going to be a problem.
Yes, it was. I think really many people could see it, but you see, remember, this document was negotiated and largely written by people with vested interests. And it's very interesting. I don't want to mention people, but it's very interesting that several of the people who were at the forefront, for example, of structuring the parliament that we have in the Constitution in such a way that it creates confusion in terms of, for example, of hierarchy. Remember, at that time, there were sitting members of the National Assembly who the vested interest was that they saw this as the National Assembly ceding power to this other new body that we really don't know about. A year or so later, several of them were sitting in the Senate, and they suddenly realized, wait a minute, what is this? And they're the very same people who had the negotiations made it difficult for that because initially in those negotiations, and as happens in many other countries, the hierarchy is very clear. So those are problems which there are many problems which were there from the onset. Some of them, I dare say, it will be virtually impossible to sort out.
But why? And this is the thing, and I think that that's the bane of a lot of the issues that we have today, is that we can see a problem, it is unfurling, it's going down the hill, and the rock is getting bigger, the snowball essentially is getting bigger and bigger, but we are spectators to a problem. And we just watch it get bigger and bigger. Constitution was promulgated, and it was very clear not too long after the promulgation of the Constitution that there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. We're not able to implement it, neither are we following it, but we're watching the thing roll down the hill. Why is it so difficult, even with something as sacred as the Constitution, to say, okay, here, we need to fix, we need to tweak, we need to turn this thing on its head? Even with the Constitution that's supposed to be supreme, it seems to be an issue. Why is that? And why can't we stop something in its tracks? We have a very good example. During COVID times, the British government realized, hang on a minute, we're going to have to put money in the pockets of Britons. We've already budgeted for the year. But because we have a plan, we can stop everything and say, you know what, rebudget this thing and move it along. We don't seem to be able to do that. And why is it that even with the supreme law, which truly, if we want to be honest, is not supreme if it's not being followed, we don't tweak it, we don't change it, we don't implement it. We're watching the snowball go down the hill. Why?
I go back to the point I made earlier about the resistance to change from the onset. And because of that resistance, part of the implementation process, I have to say with the benefit of hindsight, and this is why we must have this conversation now, it was almost like painting over cracks, you know? If you're painting and there are cracks and you don't quite
fix the holes,
fix them. And for example, going back to the example that Dennis gave about the problems that we have seen over those 15 years as how Parliament works. That was there from the onset. But even today, I think it would be very difficult to sort the problem out because you're dealing with the same human beings. Just like people look back and say, this counties really, how did we arrive at how to have these counties? And it was just the reality of what was being negotiated, and Kenyans with their suspicions and their what has been inbuilt, because you have 47 counties, 3/4 of which are basically ethnic-based counties. And I'm not sure, I'm not an economist, but I'm not sure the viability in economic terms of those counties. But nobody would want to address that issue today. So there, we cannot, we can't just blame those who govern. Those of us who are governed must take our share of responsibility.
Absolutely.
In that. Yeah.
Then again, you look at the Constitution the way it is, and one of the most important aspects in its implementation has always been a political goodwill.
Yes.
Why do I say that?
Yes.
You remember during when the process started, there was even how the Inspector General was being appointed. That was changed in Parliament to give the President the powers to appoint. Now you look at other factors on the same, even the matter of the regional coordinators being sent by the administration saying the government has to be down there. It was a bond of contention back then, and one steps back and looks at the political goodwill in ensuring that the Constitution is implemented to the T and asks the question, have we seen that in governments that have come since the promulgation of the Constitution?
You've just mentioned the regional commissioners and all that. I'm trying to see in the I'll find it at some point in the transitional provisions, because this was a negotiated document, and there are stages at which the negotiation did not yield a logical result.
Yeah.
So what you will find, and that's what I was looking for, I'll find it, is a provision in the transitional provisions of the Constitution which talks about reforming the system of governments called provincial administration to align with this Constitution. It doesn't tell you. It's like you needed to say something about it, but you are not sure that what you have put in this Constitution in those terms is something that is workable.
And yet you keep quiet. You're not sure, because you can see the exemplification of that suspicion in governance.
Yes.
You can see it in citizen participation. You are sure of your suspicion. You are sure that there's something wrong. You're sure that something is not following the path that it was envisioned in this document. But then, as is the bane of other things, we keep quiet again and watch the proverbial snowball rush down the hill. We don't do anything about it. We say, okay, something right is not quite happening right here. But then we don't aspire. We don't want to change it, because if we did, we would. We just watch it go down and we say, okay, yeah, something's wrong here. But what can I do?
And that's why I hold the view that this conversation is important. It's a starting point. We must have the conversation so that we identify or re-identify, because many of these things were quite visible at the time we were adopting the Constitution, but perhaps now, with the benefit of having seen in practice the difficulties of how it doesn't work, we could try and find solutions. Many of them I'm not personally quite sure what.
May I ask you, Charles?
Yes.
Why do you think it is that there are certain jurisdictions in this world where their constitutions are unwritten? There's no document, there's no printables all over the place that people can walk around in their handbags or pockets. Why do you think they're unwritten?
Because of basically, I would say it's the culture of constitutionalism the culture of constitutionalism. So it becomes, you see, there are, although less so now. When I 40 years ago, when I was a law student in the UK actually had nothing written. Now over a period of time, there are bits and pieces, but they actually had, but they were very clear that they had a constitution. It is a culture which has evolved over time. But even where you have a written constitution, say the United States, you still would ask the same question: why don't they have these problems?
Does it have anything to do with a people so vested in nationalism and patriotism that they understand it? The same US that you talk about, for example, ask an 8-year-old child, they know what the Constitution
Absolutely.
says. They carry it around with them in here because they imbibe it. Do we have problems with constitutional implementation because we have problems with nationalism and patriotism from the very beginning?
In a sense, my answer to that would be yes. But the question I would grapple with more is, how do you deal with that? And that's why I keep saying that where we have failed 15 years down the line as a nation is precisely in inculcating that culture of constitutionalism, so that it becomes second nature. Like you say, a primary school child knows. They don't have to know that this is Article 15, Chapter 15, or Chapter 6, Article 73, but they know in broad but accurate terms. They know, and this is where the whole issue of the spirit of the Constitution comes in. They know that this is what we have adopted as a people, in terms of what we should do, in terms of what we should not do. But nobody has invested. Nobody has invested in, inculcating that culture in the people. Civic education is a responsibility which falls upon both levels of government. But in the 15 years since the promulgation of the Constitution, I don't think government at either level has even had a budget line for that civic education, for example. Yeah.
Well, we do agree that starting these conversations and having them at this time is important when it comes to looking at 15 years down the line. And why we do have them is so that, can really ask questions that are pertinent to the existence of nations. Charles Nyachae is the former chairperson of the Commission of the Implementation of the Constitution, has been our guest this hour for Katiba at 15. And more conversations, of course, continue. Charles, thank you for doing this morning.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.